Go time in 3, 2, 1. We're live. We're live, everyone. Welcome to G Money, real talk on everything mortgages and real estate. Today, I'm here with a couple friends, Helen and Arturo. Did I say it correctly?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Oh, I got that accent in there. Yes. Okay, perfect. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell a little bit about themselves, and then we're going to kind of reconvene on why we're here today. What is our topic? And we're going to get deep with these professionals. So, without further ado, ladies first, Helen Eloyan.
Thank you.
Program Director of WCDC. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that is a great pronunciation of my last name. So I appreciate it.
Awesome. I'm 2 for 2 today.
So, I'm a program director here at the Westside Community Development Corporation. We receive grant funding from the city to accomplish a couple things. For my program specifically, which is the Westside Innovative Solutions Program, we focus on fair housing solutions as well as economic development. And part of the reason why I'm here today is because we've been working for a couple years on our fair housing opportunities, which are focused all about additional dwelling units, granny flats, accessory dwelling units. We'll refer to them here as ADUs.
Got it. Love it. That was very well done. Thank you. And with WCDC, they are a 501c3, correct? They're a nonprofit status?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
And they're also a community development organization, which is special status. So they receive specific kind of funding, HUD funding from the federal government, and it's the community development block grants.
Cool. Love it. And our other guest here, Arturo, please. Arturo Hernandez, owner of Central Coast ADU, and they do design and permitting.
Right. So just to kind of specify here, I am co-owner along with my dad. So we started Central Coast ADU back in 2020, and it was a lot different then than it is now in terms of how we kind of operated. We've had the opportunity to grow since then. So in the past, we were doing a lot of things with contractors, but as of a couple years ago, we're doing everything fully in-house as far as plan design and we've got a pretty good sized staff that we're able to handle a decent number of projects, but we really are specializing in ADUs. And the key date there was 2020 when the ADU laws changed to make it more friendly for property owners to build ADUs. There became a state standard, whereas before every local municipality had their own kind of rules, and it was kind of convoluted and difficult. And so that kind of standardization for us kind of presented like a business opportunity. We grew out of my cousin's contracting company, Ralph Casillas, Central Coast Engineering. They do a lot of local housing developments, usually like kind of higher end stuff. So when he started getting inquiries about ADUs, can you build us an ADU? And he'd say, well, I could build it, but I can't design it. So that's kind of where we came in. Me and my dad started to take a look at these new laws and what it took to actually get these designed and permitted, and decided that was something that we were going to specialize in. So since then, he has kind of his role in the company, and I have my role. Whereas I'm working on like the production part of the plans and managing that team, and he's working on more the footwork and legwork of like the permitting stuff and working that whole political end. Yeah. So yeah, we've. I wish that I had a count of the number of ADUs that we've done since 2020. Wow. That would be a good number to have. But I'm pretty confident to say that we've done somewhere between 50 and 60, and probably about 40 of those have been just in the last maybe 2.5 years. And our numbers are continuing to climb as we get better and better at it, as the cities are more and more in line with their procedures. Luckily, it's gotten a lot easier to do over the years.
Yeah. Wow. What a great intro. Thank you for what you're doing. This, especially as I've been doing my own little research, we do lending on ADUs. So we see it similar, we see it a little different. And it kind of like, what are the similarities? And I guess my initial question, just as I'm hearing you chat about the laws and the requirements, the state has laws and requirements, correct? And then each municipality, each city, do they vary? Like, does Ventura vary from Camarillo, or they pretty much just adopt what the state has done for the most part?
I'd say for the most part, they adopt what the state has, and really they don't have a choice.
Okay.
Yeah, they whatever the state has spelled out in specifics, they have to adopt that as part of their local ordinance. And so that said, there is variation, like in terms of procedures, expectations of what's actually on the plans, the different departments that you have to go through and get, certain approvals. Some cities have their own fire departments, others don't. And so then you have to work with county fire in those cases usually. There's a lot of different pieces to it, as you can imagine. So there's lots of different parties involved. But I think probably the best way to frame it, going back to the original question, was a lot of the state laws have to do with the planning aspect. Like when you go into the community development department, there's the planning department, and then there's the building and safety department. So a lot of those state laws have to do with the planning side. When it comes to the building and safety side, there's all these building and safety laws and codes that, have been around for a while and that continue to develop over time. And those still have to be followed. And so I think that kind of confuses people sometimes. They say, well, I thought that ADUs were supposed to be easy now, when they hear about all these different standards with building and safety and code requirements. And so the hard answer is yes and no. It is easier and it isn't easier.
Yeah, and we run into circumstances if you're in the coastal zone and that jurisdiction, its coastal program hasn't been updated to allow a property owner to take that state law and apply it to their ADU. That will hold up their project. I have one in the coastal area of the Ventura County, and we're waiting for the ordinance to change so we can invoke state law and get some of these benefits that the state has been affording. So it is a function of, is your jurisdiction, on top of the ordinance changes that are needed, and are they harmonizing with some of the existing laws like the coastal ordinances?
What do you think makes it so much more difficult? Is it, a single family residence, like it just conforms to the neighborhood, you have your lot line setbacks, and then I think, is it the ADUs that they're just a lot more technical in where do you place it? How close is it to neighbors? Where does it sit on your property? I mean, is it just more like the nuance of where it goes? I mean,
I think part of it is a big part of it is that a lot of times when people are developing ADUs, property owners, that they don't have any experience or knowledge of what it actually takes for a dwelling to be permitted and built. And they don't have any understanding of how much detail is needed in the plans and, during the construction. So, a lot of people haven't even seen or had an opportunity to go through architectural plans and structural plans and all that. So once they kind of wrap their head around it and realize what it takes, then, that's why it's helpful to have an experienced designer be able to apply that experience to the plans and make sure that things get through. And so a lot of times a designer is kind of the guide, not just, the artist of it or like the technical designer. They're kind of like a project manager, like the de facto project manager, and that's a big part of what we do. But it's the technical specifications usually. Specifics that we kind of come up against are like when properties have to be fire rated, like you mentioned, property lines. If it's too close to a property line, does the wall have to be fire rated? Maybe the wall doesn't, but then maybe the eaves have to be fire rated. And then we're not just talking about property lines, but how close is it to the existing house or to a detached garage or to some other accessory structure? So I mean, fire rating is an example of that. We kind of mentioned before we recorded the show, we were talking about things like soil studies, like the city of Ventura. They have these liquefaction hazard zones, and sometimes that kind of comes up depending on the size of the ADU. So there's all these kind of technical things that you have to have an experienced designer kind of know, or just be really good at being willing to wait in line, going into the city and talking to the officials there to try and understand what they want.
I would add checking on the state law and being on top of it, because a lot of times the state's coming out with laws and maybe the jurisdictions are not familiar with the latest and greatest. So, the ADU handbook that was updated by the state this year has some information for zoning and setbacks. And there's some guidance in there about when you look at that and when you don't. So it's a function of getting the best information to everybody and making sure that we're all looking at the same set of laws when we're approaching ADUs.
Yeah, that's a great resource. So for anybody that's ever thought about building an ADU, I highly recommend downloading that, printing it out, and highlighting all the things that are of interest. But knowing it well is not only key for a designer like myself, but for the property owner. because you'd be surprised across California, the cities where the planning departments or building and safety departments they don't necessarily have ordinances that are always in line with what the state laws are. And so there's opportunities there where you can fight. You can go to the state housing department and submit a complaint that say, hey, my city's doing this. I don't think that's right. Is that right? And they'll tell you, this does or does not conform to the state's laws. And so we've had to do that a couple of times. And it's, to the benefit of the property owner and their development.
Yeah. Just again, quick research, and with mortgage lending, I don't think we get as detailed into it, but I did see the difference between an ADU and a junior ADU. Any one of you want to take that on clarifying? Is there a difference on your end that you're aware of?
Yeah, so when it comes to junior ADUs, there are some restrictions. Like there's some parts of it that are kind of more restrictive than an ADU. So to start, a junior ADU generally has to be created within the footprint of the house. So you're usually not allowed to build like a new addition to the house that's going to be a junior ADU, whereas an ADU, you can do that. So that said, some cities realize that people will say, well, I'm just going to build a home addition, and later on, after I get that built and permitted and built, then I'm going to call it a junior ADU. So cities have been like, okay, well, let's just eliminate that middle step, and we'll let you build the new ADU that's attached, junior ADU that's attached to your house. So you got to kind of understand city by city, that varies. The other thing to keep in mind, though, with the junior ADU is they can only be up to 500 square feet. So there is a square footage limit. If you have a need for a bigger ADU or a bigger living space, then an ADU might be a better idea. The other thing to keep in mind is that a lot of times there will be like a restrictive covenant that comes with a junior ADU, where it's written into the state law that cities are allowed to, and most of them do require a covenant that says that you will live in either the main house or the junior ADU, that you can't just move off-site and rent both of them out to renters. And that follows the property even if it gets sold. So those are kind of important considerations to make, especially if you're trying to develop a rental property. That's probably not going to be an ideal situation for you. But if you're looking to live there long-term, and maybe you're building a junior ADU for like an elderly parent or an adult child or something, then that might make sense because the property's probably going to stay in the family for a while.
Well, and this kind of leads me to the next thing, which is cost. I see it on my end where, homeowners come to me and they say, hey, we want to do an ADU. It's a great idea. We've thought about it, supplement our income. And many folks don't realize the cost that it entails to do this. I think the junior ADU, what I'm hearing, that's mostly like garage conversions, right? So you have a roof already in place, your walls are there, you're just going to convert your garage. You're no longer going to park inside, put some flooring, add a little kitchenette and do that. Cost-wise, that's obviously going to be the least expensive, right? Because the structure for the most part is already there.
Right.
Whereas building something from scratch, or even if it's prefabricated, dragging the utilities to the back corner of the lot, there's a lot more that goes into it. And, my own experience remodeling our commercial office here, how expensive this can be. And so I think for anybody that's considering it, obviously that's a starting point, is doing your diligence for the cost. And somebody like Arturo, you're the person to sit down with to understand what does it take to get from start to finish. And it's not just the construction costs, it's also the permits, it's the planning, it's all of the, even your time, the legwork that's involved chasing around and doing this. With that being said, I think where I'm going is, Helen, you've kind of brought us together, and why we're all together is, why don't you share your idea and the project that you have going?
Sure. So we've been working with the city since, I guess, technically 2022 on this pre-approved ADU program. And the goal is to get all of the most painful parts of building an ADU over with as much as we can. So residents are free to kind of develop it with minimal government review. So at this point, we have a number of drawings, 3 specifically, that we've transmitted to the city. They're being reviewed. They will receive some additional engineering and then ultimately be approved as standard plan sets that can be just downloaded from the city's website and then basically serve as their plans for developing an ADU. And that will help remove like designer fees, plan check costs, the time that you're going to spend chasing down your consultants to make the revisions and all that kind of stuff. We're also working on assembling a resource directory. So that would have a list of like all the qualified individuals you would need to complete the project, resources for landlords, resources for tenants. I'm available personally for the Avenue as a project manager to help when things get a little too stressful. That's one of the nice things about being an employee at the Westside Community Development Corporation. We can provide all sorts of support for Westsiders who are looking to offer affordable housing and have kind of these more lower density solutions in our neighborhood. So that is something we're working on with the city, and we're looking at, I think, June 30th, so the end of June, as when we expect those drawings to be available to the public.
Wow. I want everybody to kind of take that in because, you know, just again, doing the construction myself here, acting as the general contractor, had I gone back and done it a second time, I could have saved money, right? Because I was spending things I thought I needed or I didn't know I didn't need or did need, you know, like, so one, there's the experience factor that you're bringing in professionals like Arturo working directly with the city that it serves multifacets here. One is the cost, and I can't get over that enough because ADUs are not inexpensive, and I'm just going to throw that out there, and we can do some ballpark figures here in a little bit, which I actually would like to do. But also, you're refining it where these are proven designs that are already accepted with the city, right? So you're saving time of the back and forth and will this go through? So you have a professional, again, like Arturo, that has a service. He has a company. He charges very reasonably for his service, but he's kind of working with them together. So it's already kind of built into this package that, one, you can pick a predetermined design, one of three. Look, it's not customized specific to you, but at the same time, I think the many advantages, having it turnkey is going to be huge. And the second part of that is time. When you let's just say you had the resources, your time to chase around and make revisions as you suggested, go to the city, send it in. Now, let me ask, is this going to be like an over-the-counter type permit? Like, have they said how it's going to be expedited? Like,
it should. I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of the city, but I mean, in my mind, it should be a quick smell test of where you're putting the ADU, if there's any problems associated with that.
Right.
And then once you get your green light to proceed from planning, in my mind, you should be able to pull those drawings. And then if there's an issuance fee associated with that, we'll find out. But from that point on, I think, it should be as easy as possible.
Right.
Basically just download and
that was the intent with the design of the plans. So we really tried to make them user friendly.
Yeah.
So we have our own company template that we make plans, based on. And for this project, we completely redesigned a template for this specifically for the city. And so the idea was that a property owner can pick it up and just understand it. And there's going to be parts of it that might need some explanation, the technical stuff that is going to be necessary. But that has more to do with like working with the planning department. Mm-hmm. The ideal is that everything is approved and ready to build once the little planning things are worked out. So the cover sheet basically has like mostly a blank page where people have to draw on their site plan or hire a professional to draw their site plan, which is just going to be the property lines, your existing house within those property lines, any sheds or patios, and then now where is the ADU going to go and how far away is it from the property lines and from those other structures. Mm-hmm. And from there, once that's drawn, then there's just like a bunch of check boxes where they can say, yes, I am in a fire hazard zone, or no. What kind of attic vents do you want? Check one or the other. What kind of mini split distributor do you want? check one box. So it's just kind of like, we run through the pages, and the rest of it, like we have one page, it's all the technical stuff, like all the code. So a lot of property owners will probably can skip over that, but that's going to be essential for the city and then for the builders. So hopefully, once the city kind of looks at it and kind of thinks about what their process is going to be in processing these, making sure that we're all in sync about what needs to be on there and what's going to be the easy way for everybody, for them, for the property owners, for the contractors, then, I think we're going to have a pretty good product that's going to be really easy for people to use.
Oh, absolutely. And then I'm assuming we could also have a ballpark of a budget, right? Is it A, B, and C will have this kind of range? And, of course, it's time and materials. I understand that can vary. And also there's fit and finish, right? There's using granite countertops versus just, some tile countertops. So there's different ways that you can spend money and go all out. But I think you'll have a general census. Whereas when I was building this out, I had a budget, but looking back, it wasn't really a budget. It was a bunch of blank checks that I was writing just to keep up with the city's requirements and adding fire sprinklers and, these costs that I was not even aware that I had to have. So I think for just the lay person, the person that has the idea, the concept, hey, I would like to have an ADU, they can go to the city, have these plans available, have an upfront idea of cost, know that they're already approved. And then from there, it's just like, working with everybody to get it done. And versus trying to do reinventing the wheel is what they say. When you do that, obviously cost is exponentially.
Right. And
more expensive.
You're reducing the amount of unknown, right?
Yeah.
For that person. It's like a lot of folks don't have to go to the city to pull permits, right? I do that all the time. So, and I know Arturo does as well, but it's second nature. I know what forms to fill out. I know what fees to look at. I know which staff member to go bug.
Yes.
So it's like we're in the industry, so we know, but a property owner, they may have a difficult time finding the right phone number to call or finding a staff person, or, there's different schedules happening.
Yeah, making
all the
time
doors
just
are
to
locked
get there in a work day.
Yeah. So it's hard to find people. So this is really like putting it like out front. And so there's no question, like you don't have to be worried that the city's going to come back with comments on your design or if they're not going to like, or something like that. So we're just removing as much as the stress as we can from the process early, with the hope that, like, with the understanding that development is difficult in general. So anything we can do to alleviate any of that difficulty is kind of what our nonprofit's doing.
And then I'd like to add to that, timeline-wise, by having plans that are pre-approved, you're eliminating anywhere from 8 to 10 months of plan design and municipal review.
And stress.
Yeah, and stress.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's great to have the opportunity to just kind of pick up plans, do the minimal work necessary to get it through the planning approval, and then just pick your contractor and get started.
Yeah. Wow. I love it. And then again, you're going to have some contractors that are vetted previously, some lenders on there. So everybody's on the same page of this project. They're familiar with it and they're going to be ready to go. So the efficiency all the way around, whether you need to get a loan for it, whether you're ready to hire the contractor, they're not going to be building that plan for the first time. They're going to be familiar with it and exactly what it entails. So I love it. I'm so excited to get this off the ground. We've been talking about it. You've got dates for us now, so it is legit.
It is legit, yeah. And I will say, and I don't know if Arturo is going to bring this up, and he's maybe a little too humble, but his firm has been literally not a dime that they've charged us. They've donated their services. They've been mentoring college students who are the designers of the ADUs that we've submitted. We had a partnership. We had a partnership with the college, and we had a whole design competition. Curtis Cormain, God rest his soul, was the professor who started this internship class. So we actually started in 2023 with the students.
Oh, wow.
We went through like 2 rounds of internships. I think 3 have made it through the gauntlet, and we've got them.
I'm still got the 4th one. I want to get that one done too. But this was the first 3 were the ones that I said, okay, we can manage this inside of our company to make sure that these get done and get over to the city. And so this is like kind of the first round, and we do have 2 others that we hope to get done in the near future. Hopefully the city will continue to cooperate, because I know that they're giving resources to this too.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been great. Curtis over at the architecture department of Ventura College, he passed away over this last summer, and that was really sad. I'm glad that I had the opportunity to meet him because he was a big part of this project, and really, really good-hearted guy, genuine. All the students really seemed to love his class and him as a teacher. So it's important, his name is credited on the plans because he was a big part of this. Yeah. He's the one that kind of, it sounds like, I don't know the relationship, but he connected you, like brought you and your idea into the college. And then I met you, like kind of a funny story. And we, you brought us in. And so we've had like a really cool collaboration. And I mean, it's got to be unheard of. We're talking about a private company, which is us, a nonprofit, which is Helen and Kendra, and the city of Ventura. So now we got a city, and then a community college. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about 4 large, kind of, some of them large, some of them small entities that came together to kind of accomplish this. And, outside of just how complicated the plans are themselves, just the way that this has come together has been complicated in itself. And I would tend to think that a project like this, like the odds would be stacked against it. But, we've been plugging on for a couple of years now. But yeah, it's the students, everything kind of originated with their designs. Us as the professionals, we spent a lot of time in office at the computer kind of mentoring them, not just helping them to refine their designs so that they kind of fit the project parameters, also making sure that they retain authorship and that, they're the ones that are doing the work on the actual floor plan design and the exterior design. And so that was important for us that they have the ownership of that. And they, of course, top billing on the credits on the plans. But, even outside of that, we've had opportunities to have discussions about, what it's like to work in the industry, ways to get your foot in the door. And we have been able to provide some of those opportunities to give them like some paid experience within our company to help us out do some stuff like on-site measurements and some drafting and stuff. So it's been really cool being able to work with the students, and we really value that partnership with the college.
Yeah. Wow, this is great. It's coming full circle because I also knew Curtis very well.
Oh, no kidding. That's so sweet.
Yeah, so I through Rotary, I was a fellow Rotarian with him, and we traveled to Nicaragua a couple times and worked on different projects. And his artistic skills were just amazing. And he gave us. I have twin daughters, and he had done some drawings for them when they were born, and just a very genuine guy. And we're part of a beer club that he hosted for a while. Oh, nice. I'm not sure if you ever heard about that, but very Curtis. It was great. So I'm glad that he contributed so much. So
yeah, we're honored to carry this last architectural contribution across the finish line for him.
Yeah, and it's getting there, right? So a few more steps. The renderings, they're done.
We do have some renderings that are on the plans. There's 2 for each, so you can get a nice little view of what it's supposed to look like from the outside. We were hoping to get some interior renderings done so people can get an idea like what it could look like on the inside. So we'll see if we're able to get that done. But at the very least, we got 2 of the exterior, so people get a clear picture. It's not just your traditional black and white elevation drawings, which are in the plans.
Yeah.
But those can be kind of technical, a little bit boring to look at. So we got some nice 3D renderings on there.
Beautiful. Now, with this, I know we're specifically speaking not just Ventura County, but the city of Ventura. Do you think this is something down the road that other cities will adopt that within the county? Have you spoken with any of them, Camarillo, Ojai, any of those other cities?
Yeah, when we were starting to frame this project or the program, we looked at Sonoma County. Because at that time, pre-approved ADUs weren't as popular as they were now. So we did coordinate with a lot of different groups. I think the one thing that we're doing that's unique in addition to student drawings is that there are going to be accessible drawings. And that's something that our nonprofit specifically has requested and been pretty persistent about, because not only is affordable housing obviously scarce, but accessible and affordable housing is even more difficult to come across. So our intention is, if we just inherently provide the accessible drawings, that it will cause that number to increase.
Yeah.
And it's, not just for somebody who is, disabled or a wheelchair user, but people who get injured, who maybe can benefit from having an accessible floor plan, or have elderly parents that it's becoming difficult to go up and downstairs and want to move into the ADU in the backyard. So living in place values we've embedded in this project, and as well as sustainability. Our city council requested all the drawings to be all electric, which I totally agree with. And I think we're all going that way anyway. So we've made those comments and changes as well.
Yeah, great. Now, we had also gotten together recently and we had chatted about doing a future workshop. Is that something still in the works you would like to co-host?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It sounds like the 8th is the 8th of May is gonna be the day.
Okay.
We're looking to get the city involved and also have tenant landlord services resources there for folks who are immediately interested in getting that information now.
Right. So that's the next step. This is, all the concept is there, all the work is in final stages, and then it's actually the fun part is enacting it, right? Getting everything in place to have forward motion of you can actually do this. And that's where we do want to put together workshops where Johnny homeowner and, anybody that owns a home that has a vision of an ADU, they can come hear about it directly and ask all the questions that they want and really see the vision of how much work has been put into this. The next, segment is perfect is, we're not going to get to the penny of dollar and cents, but just the overall cost, in real estate. And I'm just going to speak on the lender side of it. The cost, the high cost of California, we know it's one of the more expensive states. That has caused many shortages in housing. The builders are more apprehensive to build. Not only that, you have coastal regions where you cannot just openly build. You have a lot of restrictions. So, 800 square foot home, although that's not a very large home to build, if you place that in Pierpont right there at the beach, that's every bit of, over $1,000 a square foot just because of the location. And so I think having people that have a lot that is sizable or a garage that's acceptable to convert to additional living space, one, it provides more housing, but then hopefully we can bring it more cost effective. I don't know at the end of the day, like they always say it's less expensive to buy a house already built. I think it really varies by the area. And that's, if you're in Kern County, you're over the hill in Bakersfield, obviously the cost to build there is different than it is here in Ventura County. And that's permitting, ordinances, the cost of labor, et cetera. Arturo, you've got it pretty laid out. I mean, just a rough budget. You have, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. Are there any as large as a 3 bedroom or just 2 bedroom?
Yeah, as far as the pre-approved plans go, that's pretty much exactly what we did. We've got a 1 bedroom, which is I think it's around 550 square feet. I don't remember the square footage off the top of my head, but somewhere right around there, 1 bed, 1 bath. And then we've got one that's just under 750 square feet, which is a 2 bed, 1 bath. And then we've got one that's 1,000 square feet, which is the max size you can build in Ventura. And that's a 3 bedroom, 2 bath. So we kind of have tried to cover the bases as far as, square footage and number of bedrooms and bathrooms across the 3 plans. Yeah.
Now, I showed you on Ventura County's website, they have an interactive calculator, right, of like what size, and, they ask a few questions. We were all, I think, a little set back to see that it was in excess of $300,000, $346,000 for an ADU. But at the same time, I just want to address to everybody, it's not going to be a $10,000 ADU. I've literally had people come to me thinking they're going to convert their garage and it's going to cost $10,000. I mean, you're going to spend that much in just appliances.
Yeah.
They're not cheap, but at the same time, I think it is more cost effective. I always, just in lending, and this is my world of reference here, if you look at a single family residence, maybe I saw that there are some homes over here on the west side for sale for $600,000. But then if you go to like a duplex, let's just say it's $1 million, and that $1 million sounds scary. There's 2 units. Well, it's actually brought the cost down to $500,000 per unit, right? And so again, I think if we can do the same concept with the ADUs, what you're providing housing wise, it's bringing down the overall cost per unit. And that's very important for the family dynamic. And, what we're seeing is more and more multi-generations. It's not just, yourself and your wife, and now you have kids. So you've got that generation. Well, now grandma and grandpa are there, or grandma's there. And, I've heard up to 4 different generations in a home nowadays. And so, the cost of housing is expensive. And this is obviously one way to kind of mitigate that cost. And then, the other is, a family wants to stick together, right? So It's nice if grandma could be in the back unit. That's why they call it the in-law or the nanny's quarters,
Granny flat.
the granny flat, all these different names for it, where she can be on site and the parents could look after her, but has her own privacy. And I think that's key, is giving somebody their privacy with their own little housing. It's a great idea, and I love it, and I'm excited to be a small part of this and to bring you guys in to share this with the community of what you're working on and how important this is.
Yeah, and just to kind of feed off of that, I mean, like as a company, housing is very important to us, not just the business side, but the community side. I'm an elder millennial. We've got, a couple generations below us millennials now that are going to be coming into age, and housing is going to be just as difficult for them as it is for us. And so it's important for me personally and for our company that we're in this industry because we want to make sure that we're being a part of addressing that on a local level. And so that's why it was important for us to get involved in this project. I literally chased Helen down in the parking lot after I met her at an ADU conference, because she mentioned that she was developing this project at a very early stage. This was at a speaking engagement that I was at for a different nonprofit. And so when she mentioned it, I was in the middle of speaking and answering questions and stuff, but I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then when it was over, I was like, hey, where did she go?
He chased me outside as I was getting into a car and handed me the business card, which was the best thing that could have happened for my program.
No, and I mean, it's great that she was there that day, because who knows if this would have happened.
Right.
Who knows if we would have been involved. And so we've been happy, as a company, to provide this as a free service of our company to the community, because housing is an important issue for us, and that's why we're in the industry in the first place. And our whole philosophy is about making it as easy as possible for the property owner by doing all the work, and they do the fun part, like help us develop your design. Okay, this is a design I want, and we say, okay, we're going to make it happen. So this is kind of like the maximization of that, is like, we've got designs, they're ready to go. We, like these designs, we believe in these designs, and, let's share them with the community. Let them, build these ADUs, create this housing.
Yeah, this is all towards our goal, the Westside Community Development Corporation's goal of offering naturally occurring affordable housing, because we're thinking that incentivizing this to happen is probably more potent. And we don't have to worry about enforcement. We don't have to go back and check and make sure people are offering affordable units. Like, our purpose is to put options out there so we can help bring the supply of affordable housing up, and then hopefully everyone benefits. And I think adding the accessibility piece has made it even more meaningful. I mean, my brother's a wheelchair user. He can't live in the home that he had. Other folks, when my family immigrated here, we were multi-generations living in one house. And having an ADU could have been great for our quality of life. So we're hoping that this is going to reach like all the corners of our community for whichever purpose that they desire the ADU for. And we're just happy to be a part of that story.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to share a little bit of information just financing related, because that's pretty common. And then Arturo, I would like maybe just a little technical stuff. I'll ask you a few questions and maybe you can go off. We'll get into little parameters. Sure. And then Helen, feel free to jump in on anything that you would like to in the meantime here. So, with financing, and this is, obviously the cost is not, $10,000. It realistically, Arturo, just throw a number out at me for a 2-unit. What do you think?
For like a 2-bed, 1-bath, I think we were looking at 800 square feet.
Yeah.
And so just as an example, some of our clients have built ADUs that big for about, I think, 180,000. Okay. Yeah.
So let's just round up and say 200,000.
Sure.
I think that's a very realistic number, and I think it's a very reasonable number for what you're getting, especially the 2 units, or 2 bedrooms. I think that's a good size. a lot of people say, how do I finance that, right? We don't all have $200,000 sitting in our back pocket or in our account. And I wish we all did, but we don't. And so that's where I come into place is finance. And even if you did have that money, sometimes they say it's better to let your money work for you. And so you may want to finance it. We have different options. And so, I'll just kind of highlight high level here. What are some of those options? One, you can do this as a purchase, and we have some loans, some construction loans, which will actually finance above the purchase price based upon future value. So if you're buying that home for $750,000, but you need $950,000, right? That extra $200,000, we'll lend it based upon the future value. And so with that ADU, that home may be worth $1 million, right? And so those are some of the construction programs, and the advantages of them is that it's based upon future value. The appraiser has to know what you're building, so they have to have copies of the plans kind of itemized with the fit and finish. And not only can we do that on a purchase, but we can also do that on a refinance basis. Now, some of the simpler options are some of the refinance options. One, if you don't owe anything on the home, or let's say you do have a first mortgage already in place, you can do a cash out refinance. So you can place a new first or a first loan in first lien position to take out as much as you need to. When you're doing it as a refinance, we don't control the money. You can choose where you spend that money. That's your equity, that's your loan. As long as you qualify for that, we're not going to get involved in the construction process. So an example, you own a small home and it's worth $700,000. You're over here off the avenue. You have a very large lot. You owe $50,000. We would potentially do a new loan for $250,000, replacing the existing financing. That way you don't have dual payment. Or we have it where you have a $300,000 loan and you got grandfathered during the COVID times of a 2.5% interest rate. Many people, what they're choosing is they don't want to get rid of that low rate. They've got more money at a lower rate. So our $200,000 is a smaller or a junior loan. Then we could do a second loan on that. We have two different options. We could do a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, which is a line of credit. It's like a very large credit card tied to your home. You can draw, and your payment is based upon how much you have drawn. So again, during the construction process, that's actually really slick where, it may cost you $200,000 total, but you're not just upfront day number one pulling out $200,000. Maybe you need $10,000 for permits, and then, the general contractor needs a down payment of $20,000. Whatever those numbers may be, you can write a check off of the line of credit, and then your minimum payment is based upon how much you have charged against your line. That's a line of credit. We could also do it as a fixed, a HE loan, where it is fixed. Right now, it's probably not as common as the line of credit, but it is an option. And then we also have some, again, as remodel construction loans. So again, it just really pertains to the case. Now, I will say, again, when we compare just a traditional refinance or, a HELOC, what is the order? Just being real with everybody of easiest, cost-effective to most difficult. HELOC is the easiest, right? Mm-hmm. But they're for very well-qualified buyers. My fancy footwork of wording there, well-qualified, means that you have high credit score, right? 700 credit score. You don't have to make $1 million a year, but you need to have well-established credit. So typically they want to see a 700 plus credit score. Sometimes they'll go to a 680, but it's not for a 640, 620. The loan is in second lien position. And so it is a much higher risk for the lender. And, we always have to look at worst case scenario, which would be a foreclosure case. We don't want to take that property back, but, if we did, a lot of times the second or the junior lien gets wiped out. They get pennies on the dollar, right? To market the house, to get it up to code, to sell it, there's costs involved with all of that. And there's a lot of times not enough money left for the second lender. So ease-wise, the junior lien or the HELOC is the easiest, but they're just very selective of who is eligible and what they look at. Cost-wise, they're probably the most cost-effective. We don't always need full appraisals. Again, it's based upon credit score and loan to value. Those are the big things that we're looking for. Yes, we do verify income and the ability to repay, but the two biggest incentives there is the credit score and combined loan to value. That's where the rates are driven. Then going into the refinance, that's going to be easy. We can do it with a 640 credit score. We can do it with a 580 credit score. So there's a lot of leniency when you get into a full refinance. It's just the cost's a little bit more. It's a full underwrite. It's a little bit more in depth of what we have to do for the loan process. Now, the construction by far is the most in depth. And just as complicated as, the process of building an ADU and being overwhelmed by the number of steps and the parties involved and the costs, we have to look at statistics that people don't always finish projects. And you can drive down most streets and see that, whether it's the car in the driveway or the paint on just the front of the house. There's a lot of good intentions, but that doesn't get us to the finish line. And so we have to look at, as a lender, how do we mitigate the risk? And so the construction loans are there for a specific purpose. They're amazing. They're providing opportunities to finance these above the purchase, right? To build it all into one loan. But as a lender, we have to really be hands-on to get it to the finish line. That starts out with vetting the contractor, right? It can't just be a handyman. It needs to be a licensed contractor, right? We have to vet them. We have to make sure that they've finished similar projects. We have to look at their resume and verify those projects. We have to look at their insurance to make sure that they have insurance. Right. We have to verify that their license is good standing. These are all kind of self-explanatory things, but again, it's just we have to make sure that that is in place. Number two, we work with the contractor to set up a draw system. And it's one of those, again, they're not just going to get a blank check for $200,000 up front. A lot of it is time and materials, and we understand that initially to build it, they need to pour the pad, the foundation, they need to build the framing, they need to have some hard costs that are up front. So they work with us to set up typically up to about 4 different draws. And so they work with us and they choose those points. But let's say you've gotten through phase number 1, the check isn't just cut. We have to send somebody out there to verify that it's done, that it's done in a workmanlike manner, that everything is up to what it needs to be. So that could be the building inspector, but additionally, it could be the appraiser. And so between the two, we need to have the inspection to show that that was signed off, but then 2, the third-party appraiser that goes out there to verify that that is completed. And then a check is cut. So there's also a little bit of a lag time. They may knock that out in a week, but it may take 10 business days for them to get that disbursement. And so it's also getting the contractors on board that understand how the loans work to make sure they're not knocking on the borrower's door or our door trying to beat it down. Where's my money? We need to make sure that they're also not a fly-by-night contractor, that they have money in reserves, that they know what they're doing. So all of these reasons just to get it to the finish line. And so I think that's all I just needed to say is just, hey, there are many wonderful ways to finance it, from just an easy HELOC to, above and beyond. So do you guys have any questions on the financing, since that's not something that you're normally dealing with, hearing that maybe for the first time? Anything come to mind on your end?
Yeah, I mean, for my, on some of the other boards that I sit on, we also, for projects concerning affordable housing and lenders, we find that there is a need to have a discussion about how to keep your credit in good health, or be in a financially good position to pull those loans. Is there any sort of education that's provided or resources that your group provides?
I personally do that, and I'm a huge advocate for that. With actually, your organization, I've done something previously, the financial literacy component with Kendra, where we talked about credit. And actually, I taught the kids how to balance a checkbook and just financing 101, debits and credits of, hey, you're going to make something and sell it. How do you know how to price that? And so just kind of teaching them about how to price something, all the financial stuff. But I wish more and more information was readily accessible. Now you can go directly to the credit bureaus. I'm going to have a cringe moment here, and I'm going to be honest with you, is the 3 credit bureaus are first and foremost marketing companies. And so our system that we have in place, they score us, which determines the interest rates that we obtain, is put out by a marketing company.
Oh, wow.
So take that in for a minute. What do I mean by a marketing company is the minute that you pull your credit, they're going to sell that as a lead, and they make billions of dollars on leads. And so much that it's gotten to, we call those trigger leads. So like once you pull your credit, that's triggered that sale of that lead for somebody to initiate to call you. There's some bills that have not been passed yet, and they keep trying. There's some huge advocacy for that, which I firmly believe that you shouldn't be hounded. I think you should have to opt in versus opt out. And so where can you get information? One is you can go to the credit bureaus to get some of the information, but I would say the next best thing is to reach out to any lending professional, because we are credit gurus, right? Because every loan, somebody that comes to me and you do have that 580 credit score, for often very little cost, I can move the needle from a 580 to a 640, or even 100 points to a 680. I literally just had somebody move up 100 points by one medical collection deletion off of their credit.
Wow.
And imagine how much of a game changer that was, not only in qualifying, but also in the interest rates that were offered to him. And so every workshop that I put out for first-time home buyers, 25% of my presentation I spend on credit. Because I say, whether you're buying a house or you're buying a car, I want to spend a little bit of time on something that's going to save you money throughout your entire life. And nobody's here to really teach that. So I'm kind of struggling to answer that completely, that there's not enough information that is out there that's readily available. You can even go to Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. You can go to their sites directly, but there's a lot of confusing information. And that is also like, if you go buy a car, that is a different credit score potentially than when you buy a house. And so we use different algorithms. We have different emphasis on not just what is balance owed, but also what is your trend. Are you a minimum payment person, or do you pay extra? And especially we love the mortgage history, right? So if you have proven mortgage history, that is next to rent, the most likely for you to repay our mortgage. So it does get technical. I can go on and on about credit, but I'm just going to say yes. If anybody has any credit questions, number one, I have done a podcast in the past. It is available where you're listening to this. You can go scroll through and find it on credit. You can see it on YouTube, but it's not in person. And so you just have to hear it. And sometimes I'm a visual learner as well. Call me if you need any clarity, and I can even guide you to other. We also work with a lot of credit repair companies. There's a lot of ins and outs to credit, so I can go off quite a bit here. So yeah. And I'm sorry, I even lost the train of thought here.
No,
it was on credit, right?
Triggered a new question for me, which is, one of the other questions that I would like to answer, but, I'm a land use person, so it's kind of out of my arena, is, what is the appropriate amount of rent? Because a lot of people do want to offer affordable rents, but they're not too sure, what that is, how it could count in a beneficial way for the city. And it's, I imagine, a function of the back end financing as well.
Yeah, and actually, I try to do a lot of outreach, especially and hold it here at our office. I love getting the information out there. Last week, we just had a wealth workshop, and it was catered towards. We had 4 different guest speakers, professionals in each industry. One, again, you're excited. You bought that first home. You've felt the riches per se of the value going up, and you're feeling strong and confident. Number one, the data, I love numbers to kind of spell this out here, is the difference in your net worth. If you're a renter, the average net worth is $10,000. Okay. A homeowner, anybody want to take a guess? What?
The average?
Yeah, the average. It's 42x. Okay. $420,000, right? Wow. So when you hear those numbers, home ownership is the path to wealth, right? It's not the only path, but it is a proven methodology. It's not just you're going to reside in it and it provides housing and shelter. That's a great component just in and of itself. You also have to think of it as an asset, that when you acquire it, if you go back, and we can go back 80 years, I can show you the appreciation. So the increase in value year over year, it compounds, right? And so you have little old ladies that bought homes for $40,000. Now we cringe and say, oh, we'll never see 40,000 again. But in 20 years from now, you think they're going to say, oh, they bought that for 600,000. They're so lucky. They're going to say that. And it's tough and mean to
blowing my mind.
No, it is a reality, right? So the value of money changes over time. And so it's just, we have to accept that, but also, as you can hear, build your wealth. So we had a realtor talking about just housing in general. We had myself talking about mortgages and how that pertains to it. And then we had a financial planner. So it's other methods of building wealth. And then we had an estate planner. So it's nice to have wealth and money and assets, but what do you do with all of that? You build out your estate, your will, your trusts, your medical initiatives, and things like that. So with that being said, again, pro wealth here, yes, we can use rental income to help you qualify, right? This is another unit. So whether you're purchasing it or whether it's already established, there's some formulas. We can even use like a lease that's in place. We can use a percentage of that. Or if there's not a lease in place, then we can get an appraiser to do an appraisal of market rents. And, as I shared in, the workshop the other day, it was, if you're truly going to do this, and let's just say it's not going to be your family that you're wanting to lease or rent this to, it's an investment. And when you do it as an investment, you have to kind of change your mindset that this is essentially a business. And if you're going to rent it to somebody for $500 a month, you have to understand that's not a business, that's a charity. That is way under market in rents. And so, one, I don't want anybody to be greedy, but at the same time, if you're going to build an ADU, more than likely you're going to lease that ADU. How do you know how much to charge? And that's doing your research on a lot of different things. What is the cost that it's going to take to build it? So $200,000. If you're going to finance that, what is the cost of financing? What's your payment going to be on that? And then at the same time, do your research. Even Zillow, most people don't know, you can change it from purchases and sales. You can click another button for rentals. And I do that all the time. You can go see, even over here, you can put in all that search criteria of what are rentals going for. And so you can quickly do your numbers and that should be your starting point as you're getting the idea, the concept of, hey, I want to do this. Well, why do you want to do it? It needs to make financial sense, right? So it's not just a charity. And these, we've all kind of been in the agreement, they're not cheap per se. It is more cost effective than buying a whole nother home at $600,000. So again, if we bought, and there's, I think 3 or 4 homes over here on the west side right now for $600,000, and we add an ADU for $200,000, we're $800,000 into it. That's $400,000 per unit. We're still under market value, and we're providing additional housing, and we're satisfying a need. It's a win-win, but does it pencil out? That's a whole nother thing that you need to look at. And I always say, know your numbers, do your research.
Right.
Yeah. So I got windy on the financing. I'm telling you, I'll get going on that.
I wanted to add real quick too. A question that we get asked a lot when we go on consultations is about whether there's grants available from the state, because there had been at some point.
Yes.
And those are unavailable right now. The state has not passed any new funding for those grants.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there, because there's going to be people listening to this that want to build their ADUs, and they might have some recollection of that in the past, that those were available. But as of right now, I haven't heard any buzz about it.
And were you familiar with that grant? It was through the Cal HFA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we had a lot of clients that ended up getting the grant, which worked out well for them.
That's
and
awesome.
There was a whole. I tried to stay up to date on it as it was all progressing, because there was a whole interesting early stage of when they were doing them, where you were only approved for it if you got a construction loan through a lender.
Yes.
And later on, there were nonprofits that came in and said, we can approve these people with our, whoever was financing it. And then they were not locked into necessarily a construction loan with, any specific lender that was on the state's list, because that's how it went. They had their own list.
Yeah.
So they made it a little bit more flexible towards the end. But then in the second round of funding, they made it so that the income limit was a lot lower, so a lot fewer people qualified. And there was also a lot smaller of a pot to draw from the second time around.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to watch that all go down. But luckily, a lot of people were able to take advantage of it when it was here.
And it was up to 40,000.
Yep.
40,000.
And it was for fees and
One-time fee kind of thing. Yeah.
It wasn't the actual construction cost.
Exactly.
And I got a zillion inquiries on that, and they were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you didn't read it?" So we do a lot of financing. Actually, I got a phone call earlier today from Cal HFA, California's Housing Finance Authority, and that's the nonprofit portion of the state of California. And they've had various programs ongoing, various down payment assistance. That's what they really specialize in. So ongoing, they have a lot of 3.5%. 2%. I mean, they'll get you in for basically next to nothing out of pocket, even into a zip loan, which is in third lien position to finance closing costs at a 0 interest rate. So they have a lot of good stuff, but where the market went wild is they offered this down payment assistance program that was up to a 20% down payment. And it was like so far from their norm. It was like the demand, and they marketed it just amazing. I listened to some of the board meetings and what they were doing. They were even going into, like laundromats and making sure that they marketed in places that where the need was there, that people could really see it. So 20%, I don't want to say I always could wish for more, but it's like, not necessarily 30%, but to go from 3% to 20 is a huge leap.
Yeah.
You had limited funding. You had 450 billion or just some crazy number like that, but it's still limited, no doubt. Maybe you could have helped twice as many homes at 10%, So there's always the little devil's advocate. Well, they burnt through the first round in 10 days. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to be able to help, I think 3 or 4 families in that. And our company did 10% of all of the loans. Like, proud of us for doing that many.
Cool.
We really roll up our sleeves and try to do those loans. They're a great opportunity for the clients. They came out with revision 2, and then they put a lot more requirements on it, and it was a lottery system. So you had to be a first generation home buyer. And so that disqualified a lot of people. The income, they kind of kept it, but the first generation home buyer definitely excluded a lot of people that were previously eligible. But again, I helped another 3 or 4 people with that. It wasn't utter chaos. You won the lottery, and so once you were pre-approved with a lender, then you uploaded all of your information, and they vetted and make sure that everybody did everything correctly. And then they randomly selected who was eligible. And then from there, once you got selected, you then had a time period, a window to go find a home. a lot more orderly fashion, I'm going to say. I don't think they realized how much of a reaction they were going to get. So
I think probably the same thing happened with the ADU thing, because that seemed nuts. I just remember, because when I used to be on Facebook, which was, I quit it recently, but when I was on Facebook, there's this really huge group.
was it Helen? Was she?
Oopsies.
There was a really huge ADU group on Facebook called How to ADU, and its
Yes.
helpfulness is kind of back and forth. There's a lot of homeowners on there answering questions that they don't really know about, but there's also a lot of professionals on there. But some of the professionals are just like trying to get business, and others are actually trying to help. So sometimes you can find cool information on there. But I remember seeing a lot of posts on there about the ADU grants, and how like people were calling and emailing, and they couldn't get through to anybody anywhere, like at the state, at the lenders, at the nonprofits. Like nobody was just getting answers. And then every so often somebody would post, "Oh yeah, I got mine," and everybody would be like, who did you talk to? Like, can I have their email? So it just seemed like really, really nuts, especially the first time around.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, in my mind, I'm like, wow, that part seems pretty stressful. The rest of this permitting stuff, like, was easy for.
Yeah, that's funny that we have that perspective.
Yeah. One of the other things that I want to bring up is I've just seen it is the ordinance, the AB 1033, which was an assembly bill that did pass back in 2023. And all this said, I haven't really had any inquiries on it, but I've seen it in the news, and it's still out there. Its law is effective January 1st, 2024, that it is possible that if you have an ADU on your property, okay, you're all said and done, that you can actually sell that ADU by itself. And so what does it require is it requires you to form an HOA, a homeowners association, and basically treat it as a condo, that it gets its own parcel number and legal description, and that you can actually vest it as real property. There's localities, the local cities and counties have to approve this and put something into place. As of now, as of my research, the only real place that I saw this was Santa Cruz. So I don't think it's really adopted as of yet as much as it could. As a lender, I see a lot of concerns with this, but again, the state is just pushing things out to try to make it more affordable. And so not only can you buy a condo for less expensive than a single family residence, but now you can buy an ADU in certain areas. I guess, sure, let's do it.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that gets kind of applied at a local level. But I imagine the cities probably are not big fans of it, because that kind of just throws a total wrench into that whole process.
It can muddy the waters. And right now, we're just in the lending world, we're having a very challenging time with HOAs in general. In the last few years, we've had some really catastrophic incidences, and it's based upon deferred maintenance. And so like in Florida, there was a condo complex that completely collapsed in the middle of the night. And when you own a condo, you technically only own the walls in. And so the HOA is there as a master insurer. They insure the structure, they insure the roof. They have to do the maintenance. And so as a lender, again, we have to mitigate and really review, do they meet requirements? It's gotten very technical, and condos are right now challenging, because where I've seen it is the significant rising cost of insurance. The board members of the HOA will cut costs where they can, right? They're looking out for all the homeowners, but they're cutting the insurance coverages. And so many of these HOAs, these complexes, and I'm working with one right now that is non-insurable. Like, we can't even do a loan on an HOA on a condo. And this is one specifically in Camarillo. It's a newer one. It's very nice, but they have diminished their insurance so much that it's non-lendable. Now, I was able to get the purchase completed, but the borrowers had to accept a non-traditional type of financing, which is at a much higher rate because the risk is much higher. And so that, to me, is they're suffering. a higher cost than they should just by, them not meeting the requirements. And so where I'm going with all of this is I commend you guys of bringing the lender in, right? Because that is so important. Anything that you're doing, as we shared earlier in our conversations before we started recording, was, the resale value and whether you can lend on it is really dependent upon whether you can lend on it, right? If you have 5 ADUs on one property, there is a limit that lenders will not accept, and so you cannot get a loan. Well, if you need to sell that property, you might not be able to sell it except for the cash buyer. Well, now that limits your pool of opportunity. That's going to hinder the value of that. And so bringing a lender in to understand our guidelines and our perspective, which a lot of times is quite different and doesn't always make rational or reasonable sense. Right. I'm the middleman to kind of help, decipher that. And so even with what you guys are doing, I commend you for bringing in the bearded lender over here to make sure that it meets guidelines and that we can provide different opportunities to finance what you've put your hard work into to providing to so many.
Yeah. And I want to thank both of you for being a part of this program, because we really could not do it by ourselves. I mean, Arturo chased me down, and I was thankful for that. I can't remember how we, I think just getting interested in home ownership on the avenue got us connected. But I mean, we had a accessibility plan reviewer who donated their services. Everybody has basically donated their time and services to stand up this program for ADUs, the pre-approved ADUs. And it really did. It took a village. It's still taking the whole village. Yeah. And we're just really honored that, even this mix of nonprofits and for-profits are all joining together so we can get this done and get affordable housing done. So I just want to thank the both of you for your involvement.
It's been our pleasure.
My pleasure. Small part on my end. I'm going to say Arturo's the true hero here, and I see that, and I just want to give a shout out. Like, he is donating his time, his expertise.
His staff's time.
But not only that, I mean, maybe you do want to do, a different design and a customized ADU. He still that's what he does for business, for profit, is he offers the service. So you're not going to be there at your own demise. He's going to walk you through and do that for a fee, very reasonable fee that he can get you all dialed in. So there are, whether it's the pre-designated ones, the select 3, or you do want something custom, he's there to walk you through that. And his knowledge, just listening to him today, I am very impressed of all of his wealth of knowledge of ADUs. I mean, it's gotten a lot more technical than I ever thought. Junior ADUs, granny flats, whatever you want to call it, accessory dwelling units. It's Arturo's middle name. It's
Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to all the design staff with Central Coast ADU, including the students. They really stepped up to the plate for this one. So our in-house designers, there's Aubrey, who's also kind of helped manage the project, and with the students, she's been in close contact and working with them. And then there's Raina, and they both have handled different parts of the project, but they put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of creativity, a lot of just trying to look at things from different perspectives, and they've done a really good job. They're really great designers and great people, so I'm really happy to have them too in my organization, and also have the opportunity to work with the students that did the designs.
Yeah. I would say the city. I'm impressed. The city of Ventura has not always been easy to work with, and I can attest to that firsthand of pulling my own permits. But I think for them to be open and willing to work with you guys on this is huge, and it's something to be said. I'm not even going to stereotype that. It's tough to get somebody as passionate as all the volunteers that have stepped up and want to be a part of this. On the city side, this is our regulations, take it or leave it. And there is a lot of that attitude. Whereas if you can say, just kind of change that mindset a little bit, what you guys are doing is providing a huge service to our community. This is going to benefit us. So why would we not jump on board? And I think that's really where it's at. That's what I can see it as. Mm-hmm. Maybe you guys can speak differently, but I'm just saying, I'm glad the current administration that's in with the city is willing to work with you guys and make this readily available. And that's going to be part of our workshops and different outreach to get this momentum and really not just concept, but, you know, ADUs all over the city. So shout out to them. Thank you, City of Ventura.
Yeah, it seems like there's definitely been some key partners at the city that are, you know, real champions of this. So that's great. And then, you know, this all originated with, you know, Helen and Kendra and their nonprofit that they're a part of. So, I mean, shout out to you guys. You guys were like 2 years ahead of the curve. I mean, this started, I got involved around the end, I think the beginning of 2023. And, you know, I don't know how far ahead of that you guys were already talking about this, but the ADU law that made it so that cities have to have pre-approved plans available to their cities, that didn't go into place until this year. And so this project, since it's been going on for a couple of years, like they were way ahead of the curve. So they had some vision.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Any final thoughts before we get going?
I personally like the throw the kitchen sink at the affordable housing approach, and I think that's what we're doing here at
Yes.
the Westside Community Development Corporation.
I love it. Well, without further ado, Helen and Arturo, thank you for being here today. So much good information. If you're interested in ADU, these are our gurus. Reach out to them. We'll have their contact information. Listeners, thank you for listening. Without you, we wouldn't have a podcast. I appreciate you. Like, subscribe, all that fancy stuff. This is Greg Abrams on G Money, real talk on everything mortgages and real estate. We're out. Peace.